Unfound has now covered 356 disappearances over the course of almost 500 episodes. It has an interview-based format and concentrates on the facts, not the theories. Today, and for the 19th time, I will take you back to the beginning, then right up to the present, as I cover news over the past 4 months pertaining to some of Unfound's cases. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. But first, Unfound news. Be looking for my interview that got recorded back in late November to be playing on the Silver Linings podcast within the next month. As I stated when I appeared, this is probably the most in-depth discussion about myself and disappearances and Unfound that I've had with anyone in the true crime community. Next, I plan to produce an Unfound Now episode for the public and a Found episode for all of you Patreon and YouTube supporters. Be looking for them both before the year becomes 2025. Finally, 2024 was certainly a series of highs, followed up by the past month, which has been one of the lowest points ever. I'm doing everything I can to get back to the old Ed. Okay, for anybody who is unfamiliar on how I go about doing these updates, is at some point, weeks before the episode comes out, I start looking at all of the disappearances that Unfound has covered, both between the regular episodes that come out every Friday and the Unfound Now episodes that come out every month, well, almost every month on the YouTube channel, and I check to see if there are any updates. And even though maybe remains have been found in a disappearance, doesn't obviously necessarily mean I don't look at that disappearance again. It certainly could be in some of these where remains are found that there is an ongoing investigation in which I will try to keep up on that kind of situation as well. But I will go back and look at all of them. So now we're talking, about 400 disappearances at this point. And I'll do my best to go through all of them and try to figure out if there have been any changes since the last update episode. So what you're going to hear, what's going to be following this little explanation by myself, are any updates since the last update episode occurred, unless there was something that I really, really missed that goes back further than that. So, but for the most part, and I think pretty much all of these updates that are going to be following are September, October, November, December of 2024. There's nothing that goes back any further than that, as if I missed something during the last update episode or some other update episode before that. So just keep that in mind. This is not a situation where I'm going through updates that go back the whole way back to 2016. Not so. And so when I find the changes or updates, changes in status, or any information that I've gotten, maybe from talking to a family member, something like that, that gets included in the update episode. So that's what you're going to be hearing. And I make a list and check it twice, being that this is the Christmas season. And I just put some notes into a file, and I go off those notes to tell you what those updates are. I do not type sentences out, although, as with any update episode, I will be reading some articles that have been written as updates for some of these disappearances. But for the most part, I'm just looking at the notes that I've taken, that I've put together, and filling in the blanks. So it's a little bit of improv as well. So that's how I do this. And I will start with the beginning, going way back to 2016 and work my way up to the present. So I do these in the order that they were featured on Unfound. So I do all of the podcast episodes first, and then I go into the Unfound Nows. But in each situation, I go from the oldest episode to the newest episode. That's the order in which they will be talked about. So let's get started, and I will be starting with Flight 370. MH370 was a Malaysian Airlines flight originating in Kuala Lumpur. Its destination was Beijing, China. On the night of March 8th, 2014, while flying over the South China Sea, all of its communication equipment was shut off, making it invisible to air traffic control. An hour later, Malaysian military radar tracked the flight heading northwest up the Malacca Strait. Flight 370 was never seen again. The update is that it seems in 2025, in the upcoming year, there is going to be another search, meaning they're going to send some boats with some submersible unmanned vehicles, and they're going to search another part of the Indian Ocean, kind of down in there in the southern Indian Ocean where they have searched in prior years, but this is going to be an area kind of connected to that area, and it's Malaysia that is initiating this. Now, you know that many countries have been involved at a variety of times. China, Malaysia, Australia have all been involved in trying to track down Flight 370, of course, with the main idea being that it's on the bottom of the ocean down there. You know, my friend and former guest Jeff Wise, who I consider to be the expert on Flight 370, disagrees with that, and I'll get into that in a moment. But they are going to give this, I guess, another shot. Now, why are they doing this? Well, probably the easiest way to explain this is just to direct you to Jeff's most recent episode. This would have been the one that came out right before Christmas, in which he talks about this technology called WSPR, WSPR, which stands for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. And this has to do with amateur radio, ham radio signals. And I'm not an expert on it. Once again, I direct you over there. But Jeff has talked about it a variety of times on his show that's on YouTube. So I would go check that out. Once again, I'll say it again. Go check it out. But there is a guy, Richard Godfried, who within the last few years, maybe the last 5 years, has come up with the idea that this weak signal propagation reporter, this technology that ham radio operators use, the way, of course, the waves bounce across the atmosphere and everything, you can communicate for long, long, long distances. And Richard Godfried's idea is that looking at signals that were being tracked and recorded back at the time in 2014, and yes, this was being done at the time, that you can use the interruption or something like that in the signals to maybe track down where Flight 370 was, being that there was no jet that should have been in the southern Indian Ocean at that time, and the belief is that the jet flying through the atmosphere could disrupt these signals, on and on and on and on. Now, you should know Jeff Wise thinks this is all crap. It also sounds like voodoo to me. But Jeff's belief is that the reason this search is starting again is because somebody in Malaysia, the government, somebody, has looked at this theory and thought it to be possible. Because if we're to believe this, then the jet did go into the ocean, but in a different area of the ocean. So this is what Richard Godfried is selling, this idea that he is selling to people, not actually selling it. It's a colloquialism or whatever. I don't really mean he's asking money for it, but this is the pitch he's giving to the people who would go search for Flight 370. And it's very possible that some people have bought into this. I will say it again. Jeff doesn't think there's anything to this. And reading it as a layman that I am regarding this kind of technology and all of this, it doesn't quite sound believable to me. But at this point, what are you going to do? There's a lot of desperate people out there looking for new ways to try to find the jet. So I think that's why this search is going to happen. They're going to try again in 2025. Of course, the problem is that all the other technology that has been used, the pings and these handshakes and everything that all of you have heard about over the years, say that there's no way the flight went down in the area that Richard Godfrey, insists, where he thinks it went in, given this different technology called WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Report. If you want to look this up, just in general, the technology, you can just go to Wikipedia and just type in WSPR if you'd like to do that. But that's the update. They're going to use this questionable technology, questionable theory, to spend millions and millions and millions and millions of more dollars going out there and searching in a new location for Flight 370. And I, once again, urge all of you to check out Jeff's channel on YouTube. Please subscribe, share it. He's doing a good job over there, even though he's not getting the attention that he should, to be frank with you. I think the other thing is that there have been other people in the, what do we want to call it, airline community who have shows who've kind of waded into this. And although I listen to those or watch those channels otherwise, it's obviously when those people get to this particular topic of Flight 370, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And I realize a lot of you question Jeff and whether he should be believed. He has this crazy theory, got hijacked and taken to Russia or Kazakhstan. I get it. But my opinion, and if you respect me, I urge you to take my words at least a little bit seriously. The way I look at it, Jeff is really the only person, prominent person, who's going about this in the correct scientific way. And that's what's most important to me. His theory about isn't so much important to me, but when I see and I follow his channel every week, the way I look at it, that's the way probably I would go about it if I was working on Flight 370 and nothing else. I don't know if I believe his theory or not, but he's certainly going about the right way. And I believe that if Jeff comes across facts that show that the flight was not hijacked and that it was one of the pilots took it and flew it in the South Indian Ocean, Jeff is going to be the first person to tell you that. That's what's most important to me. He's not going to hold on to something so tightly that he's going to lie to all of you or skew the facts and everything else to fit what he thinks. He's not going to do that. And that's why he has my respect. So go check out his channel. But the update is there's going to be another search for Flight 370 in 2025. Next update, Linda K. Carroll, and this might be maybe the first time we've ever mentioned her on an update episode as far as including her as an update, I think. Linda K. Carroll was the mother of two living in Crestview, Florida. She was very artistic and, as the oldest child, had enjoyed babysitting her younger siblings. On September 25th of 1984, she had gotten home from work in the early evening. A few hours later, residents reported hearing a scream in Linda's neighborhood. This was followed by the sound of a car speeding away. When a friend came by the next morning to pick Linda up for work, she wasn't there. She was never seen again. The update here, I can't say everything, but I can't say some, is that within the last 2 months, I spoke to Linda's sister, Cheryl, who was the guest for that episode going way back to 2017. And she's found out that the police, the department that is responsible for Linda's disappearance. Now, if you don't know, maybe I should put it this way. think the major theory over the last 40 years has been that her estranged husband caused her disappearance. Linda's is a disappearance that I've mentioned once in a while where there's an obvious sign of abduction. It's very rare, of course, in the disappearances we cover on Unfound. Usually there's no signs of violence at all. But Linda's, there was, much like Jody Huisentruit's. With Linda, it was obvious that somebody broke into where she was living, and she was dragged out of her house. And the belief is that her estranged husband was the one who did it. She was in the process of leaving him. She was trying to get custody of their children. He was living in another state at the time, but he never did have an alibi for when this all happened. And in fact, I don't know what the year would have been, maybe 2019. I actually spoke to Linda's daughter, who was very, very little at the time. And she had a memory. I don't know if it's, of course, you get really, really young. Is it a memory? Was it a dream? Was it something in between? I don't know. But she allegedly remembered this happening. That she was in the car when her father did this, and the father took them out on some back road or something like that. You can decide whether that happened or not. I'm not sure either way. Although my main theory is that the estranged husband did do this. Makes all the sense in the world. However, now here in the 21st century, recently, it seems that the local police department is looking at the possibility that Linda might have been the victim of a serial killer. Of a guy whose modus operandi was similar to what seemingly happened to Linda, and was in the Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas area around that time, allegedly. That's all I really can say at this time. Very surprising to me. Maybe there's something to it. Cheryl and I, like I said, we did talk about it back in October, I guess. But that is the update. So, hey, I'm just happy to hear that they're throwing around some ideas on a 40-year-old disappearance. They may be wrong, they may be right, but they're thinking about it and trying some things. I give the police department credit for that. So that is the update for Linda K. Carroll. Next update, Tom Brown. Thomas Kelly Brown was an 18-year-old from Canadian Texas. He was the president of his class and loved acting and public speaking. On the night of November 23rd, 2016, Thomas was on his way home after hanging out with friends. He stopped to get gas in his Dodge Durango. He was never seen again. And unless you've been living under a rock, an unfound rock for the last almost 6 years, you know that Tom's remains were eventually found in late January, early February of 2019. And ever since then, it has been a lot of drama, a lot of sensationalism, on and on and on and on. And you also probably know that there was a lawsuit that was brought, was it early this year, even last year, that Phil Klein and Tom's mother and stepfather brought against the radio show host at that radio station and that guest for what they had to say about Tom's death with appearances that the guy made on that radio station. I don't know, starting in, it all seems like it's been years and years ago, but I know it's more recently. 2021, 2022, somewhere in there, maybe 2023 as well, somewhere in there. And making some, what I would call outrageous comments, outrageous theories, salacious, sensational, no basis in fact, and nothing. And because of that, Phil Klein and Penny and Tom's stepfather, we have to be very clear on this, Tom's stepfather filed a lawsuit against that host and that guest, and maybe there were some other people involved in it as well. And that was unsuccessful, as I knew it would be. I'm not saying what they were doing on that radio station was right. It's certainly legal. It's certainly legal but I don't know if it's moral, and I don't know if it's ethical, but it's certainly legal, at least here in the United States. And the update is that it seems that that radio show host and that guest did not get the message at all. I mean, they won their lawsuit. I guess it got dismissed, I guess you could say. So what have they done? They've just gone back to doing what they were doing before. And I have no dog in this fight. It seems that I can jump from side to side depending on what the topic is regarding Tom's death. I do not believe it was a murder. There are some things on which I take the side of the Browns, the Meeks, in that what was being done at the radio station, although legal, should not be done, but it was. On the other hand, I'm not on that side when it comes to everything that Phil Klein, all the allegations that he has made, and none of it has come true. Zero. What I really continue to say about the whole thing, and what I mean by they've gone back, the host and that guest have gone back to doing what they were doing before. They've just gone as if none of it ever even happened. The charges, the allegations, the defamation charges, whatever, that got dismissed. They've just gone back to doing what they were doing. I would call that an extremely, extremely bad taste. But that's unfortunately what the whole media coverage has descended to regarding Tom's death. But I continue to say that these people in their private lives may be good fathers and parents and siblings and everything else. But when it comes to Tom's disappearance and Tom's death, no matter what you believe, suicide, accident, overdose, murder, whatever else, all of these people on either side, the radio show host, the guest, Phil Klein, and now, unfortunately, Tom's parents, nobody is clean in this anymore. They just come across as some of the most foul people. I'm just so over it. I want to help. I'm willing to look at any facts that anybody ever wants to send me. That's always be on any disappearance that Unfound is covered. I'll continue to look at any fact that anybody wants to send me. But the fact is that nothing has changed since that meeting was done, when it was that, in 2019, 2020, in August, whenever that must have been. I don't even know what year it was now. It seems like yesterday, but it's been years now. Nothing has changed since then. Nothing. Zero. And that everybody on each side that I've mentioned in this little update here continues to say things without any proof. What these people don't realize, they're all more alike than they'll ever admit. That's why this is going on. Remember, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And these people are just simply not indifferent about each other. And there's a lot of passion going on there, and that's what makes them all so similar. They don't see it that way. I see it that way. And when it comes to the disappearance, it's just a travesty what's going on here. Blaming all of these people. I'll just leave it at that. Next update. This could be another first, just like Linda K. Carroll. Once again, this is update episode number 19, so there's no way I can remember what updates have been done, what updates haven't been done, who missing people have been mentioned before and haven't been mentioned before. So please forgive me on that. But this is another one with Nico Leisi that strikes me as maybe the first time ever being mentioned on an update episode. At least it's been quite a while. Nico Anthony Leisi was an 18-year-old from Addison, New York. He was a wrestler and loved the outdoors. On September 30th of 2011, he and another young man left New York in a pickup truck. Over the next few days, Nico's traveling companion arrived in Michigan, while Nico was last seen by a friend in Franklin, Tennessee, alone. He was never seen again. You might remember that eventually this truck was found stripped to its bare bones down to the frame and cab or something like that a few years later in somebody's garage. And one of the qualities about Nico's mother, Monica, even when she appeared on Unfound going way back, I guess to maybe 2018, is that she was very tight-lipped about who these people were, the addresses involved when Nico and this other guy went down to Franklin, Tennessee. And although I think if you looked hard enough, you could find that information out there. But in the interview that she did with me over 6 years ago now, she did not mention anything. Well, for the first time, officially, a person of interest has been named. And this happened in November of 2024. And so this is a very long article, and I don't mind reading all of it because we only have like 15 updates for this episode, at least when it comes to the podcast. So I am going to read a majority of this article. It comes from the website williamsonscene.com. Franklin real estate agent and now convicted rapist Eduardo Aguirre was revealed as a person of interest in the more than a decade-old missing persons case, which has become a homicide investigation into the death of Nico Leisi. That information came to light during Aguirre's trial in October, but the jury who convicted him on one of the 4 charged counts of rape never heard that information. Aguirre faces 8 to 12 years in prison and is scheduled to be sentenced on February 14th, 2025. This is the first time that law enforcement officials have publicly named anyone as a person of interest in the 2011 case of Nico Leisi. Then an 18-year-old from rural Steuben County, New York, who was last seen on Flintlock Drive in Franklin, where his phone last pinged. As previously reported, Leisi is believed to have traveled in September 2011 from New York to Michigan and then to Franklin in a stolen 2004 GMC Canyon pickup truck. Aguirre's connection to the case was made public on October 21st of 2024, the first day of his trial, in a motion hearing to determine whether Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Assistant Special Agent in Charge Nathan Neese could testify in front of the jury that Aguirre had previously lied to police in regards to the Leisi case. Aguirre's lawyer, Josh Branda, provided a statement to the Williamson scene for this story. Over the last 13 years of this investigation, Mr. Aguirre has cooperated with law enforcement, including giving multiple interviews. He's never been charged with any crime. We hope Mr. Leisi's family can find peace in this sad situation. Williamson County Circuit Court Judge David Villey ultimately ruled against the state's motion to bring Neese in to testify, meaning that the jury never heard the special agent's description of Aguirre as a person of interest in an ongoing homicide investigation. Law enforcement has released a few details in the 13 years since Leisi disappeared. Neese shed more light on the case when he testified about 2 differing statements Aguirre made regarding Leisi's disappearance, both of which have been sealed for years as part of the ongoing investigation. Aguirre's first statement, a handwritten paragraph, is dated December of 2011 and is from an interview with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office School Resource Officer at Franklin High School. Aguirre graduated from Franklin in 2009, so he may be in real estate now, but at one time he was only 20 years old at the time of this disappearance. Leisi also briefly attended Franklin High School. The second statement is a more detailed 2-page typed deposition that Aguirre gave to New York State Police, who visited Franklin in 2016. Aguirre told law enforcement in 2011 that Leisi came to his house late in the day on October 1st, 2011. On the morning of October 2nd, Aguirre said that he and Leisi played soccer with Aguirre's dad and uncle. The game ended around 8:15 a.m. when his uncle was injured. My dad went to the hospital. Nico and me went to the house. Later, we watched my brother's soccer team play. We got home and Nico got his backpack and left. A typed law enforcement summary says that Nico left without warning or saying goodbye and added that Aguirre's father confirmed his son's recollection. In 2016, Aguirre told detectives more information. He said Leisi called him as he was traveling to Franklin. Aguirre said that he wired Leisi gas money prior to his arrival at Aguirre's Flintlock Drive home in a pickup truck. I believe at some point Nico told me that he needed to get rid of the pickup truck. Nico had a couple guns with him when he arrived at my house, Aguirre said. Aguirre stated that Leisi gave the truck to James Schrader, one of Aguirre's friends. I believe that Schrader and a friend of his may have chopped that truck up for scrap, Aguirre told detectives, adding that Schrader may have been aided by another friend who he identified as Jacob Quirant, Kweirant. According to public reports, Schrader died in 2014. Quirant died in 2015. How convenient for Aguirre. Aguirre said Leisi spent the night at his house before he contacted a man named Jose Vargas of Springfield, who helped Aguirre find a room where Leisi could stay. They went to a home on Westminster Drive in Franklin. Aguirre told detectives he spoke with an unidentified Hispanic guy described as appearing 50 years old. His statement continued, adding Leisi took all his belongings with him when he stayed at the Westminster Drive home. Aguirre said he returned to that house the next day to see Leisi. Nico said that he applied for a job, but I don't know where he applied. Nico came outside and he talked with me in the driveway, Aguirre's statement reads. So, as I've said many times about disappearances such as like this, these people can tell you everything but what you really want to know. They have all the information in the world, except what is mostly needed. Aguirre stated that a couple days later he was contacted by Vargas and was told that Nico had left and that I needed to come pick up his belongings or pay his rent. Aguirre said he went to the Westminster Drive home where there were several Hispanic people. Aguirre told a detective that he retrieved a bag of Nico's clothes from the bed he'd been using and threw them away at some nearby apartments. I then went home. I've never heard from Nico since. To the best of my recollection, I did not try to call Nico until his family started calling me. I've never been able to get a hold of Nico. Leisi's case seemingly went cold until the summer of 2016 when detectives found the stripped and disassembled frame of a 2004 GMC truck stored in a residential detached garage at a home on Colorado Avenue in Nashville's Sylvan Park neighborhood. The home was owned at the time by James Schrader and Deborah Carter. Those are the parents of Aguirre's friend James Schrader Jr., I guess, who died in 2014. That garage has since been demolished after the property changed hands and was redeveloped. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation took over the investigation in 2017, and therefore, Nice was never able to interview Schrader or Quirant before their deaths. Aguirre's refused to voluntarily be interviewed by the TBI investigators. He's always been somebody that's been involved in the investigation from the beginning, Nice told the Williamson scene following Aguirre's rape conviction. Nice also said he believes that Schrader had knowledge about this case. I think he had information about not only the whereabouts of the vehicle prior to his death, but previously I've never had a chance to speak with him. Nice confirmed for the first time to the Williamson scene that Vargas had been interviewed by law enforcement in the past, but couldn't confirm that he was at any point a person of interest. Law enforcement has yet to identify the Hispanic Franklin man at the Westminster Drive home that Aguirre wrote about in his 2016 statement. I'm betting that person doesn't exist. Nice testified during the hearing that while Aguirre's two statements were different, he believes that the more detailed statement has some truth in it. So that, and there's more to this, talking with Nico's mother. I have to admit, the names that I just read, maybe I've heard the Aguirre name before, but the Schrader name, the Quirant name, those are all new to me. But as you know, I have 400 other disappearances that are under my umbrella. But it seems like they're on the right track. Given all of this, though, it's still... what exactly happened here? I'm perfectly willing to believe that Nico Leisi was murdered. It's just hard to understand what exactly happened. Was it over drugs? Was it over the truck? Was it over money? What went so wrong? And we have to remember the guy that was with Nico, who went from New York to Tennessee, came home just fine. Nico didn't. Why? I don't know. This is the most detailed article I think that's ever been written regarding Nico's disappearance, but it doesn't seem that anybody has a firm grasp on the why of all of this. I mean, we have the how and the where and the when, but the why, hopefully we'll eventually know, but it doesn't seem we know right now. So that's the update for Nico Leisi. Next update, Peggy Maguire. Peggy Ann Maguire was a 20-year-old from Eufaula, Oklahoma. She had a son and raised farm animals. On November 16th of 2015, Peggy dropped her son off at school. Her plan was to then go home to work on plans for a new porch on her house. She was never seen again. The most popular theory is that she was still living with the father of her son, and that this guy did something to Peggy when she got home that day. It's a theory that I like very much. But the update is recently they had a vigil for Peggy, and so I'm just going to read you an article about it. This came out on November 30th of 2024. This is from Stidham, Oklahoma. The family of Peggy Maguire held a candlelight vigil on Saturday, still desperately searching for answers after 9 years. Peggy was first reported missing in 2015 by her family. 9 years later, her family held a candlelight vigil and prayed somebody with information will come forward. They said all they want is for someone who knows exactly where she is to speak out and tell them where to find her. Just an anonymous tip, said Betty Davis, Peggy's mother. The vigil was held at Peggy's missing persons billboard near the four-way stop across the street from the Stidham Public School. I miss her every day, shared Davis. Peggy's niece, Nicole Schwar, still holds on to the happy memories she has of her aunt. She was such a kind person. She treated me like her own daughter. I remember just her kindness, how gentle her personality was, how she tried to help everyone around her. Fox 23 has followed the family's search to find Peggy throughout the years, and her family's asking for help to bring them closure. We're praying for justice, for closure, not only for us, just for her son, for my grandmother, her mother. She's been gone too long, said Schwar. Peggy's family do not think she is still alive. They believe she's been dead since they first heard that she went missing. All they want to do is give her a proper burial at home. There's currently a $150,000 reward. That has to be one of the higher rewards for all of Unfound's disappearances. For anyone who provides information that leads officers to where they can find Peggy. If you have any information on Peggy's whereabouts or what happened to her, you can call the Lighthorse Police Department at 918-732-7800 or the FBI at 918-687-7500. You can remain anonymous. If you might remember, there was it wasn't since August, but some point within the last year, there was some sort of search done somewhere around that area. Were they looking in a pond or a marsh? Something like that. And I think I said at the time I would be surprised if they found anything, and they didn't. I continue to believe that the guy that was in Peggy's life, was he an ex-husband at that point, but they were still living under the same roof together. All you women out there, don't do that. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. And then, if you remember, a witness said he was going down the road in like a high lift type of equipment machine. Can move dirt, and the box was like the shovel part was way up in the air, and maybe leading to people to believe that maybe Peggy's body was in it. And you might also remember that later, after the episode came out at some point, Peggy's son, the son she had with this guy, he ran away. And fortunately, he was found, and I think he's okay now, here in 2024. But this certainly seems like a domestic violence disappearance to me. Now, where that guy put her, well, could be a lot of different places. If you have a machine like that, then a lot of different places are possible. But I think, as we've learned on Unfound, in a lot of these types of disappearances, the remains end up on private property of the perpetrator, some piece of property that this person can control. And that's where I continue to lean with Peggy's disappearance. So there you go, the update for the disappearance of Peggy Maguire. Next update, Brandy Myers. Brandy Lynn Myers was a 13-year-old from Phoenix, Arizona. She was shy and liked to wear big glasses. On May 26th of 1992, Brandy went out by herself into her neighborhood to collect money for a school fundraiser. She didn't come home later that day. She was never seen again. If you remember, the guy who murdered her was convicted. Who murdered her was convicted within the last couple of years. and he was convicted of murdering other women or girls. Brandy technically was not part of that trial, but it is accepted that he caused Brandy's disappearance. He was on that route. He lived in a house on that route that Brandy would have been on that day, and so this really was bad luck for her. The update is very sadly that her sister, Kristen Thielen, died in October. So about 2 months ago. To be honest, I did not find out about this until maybe 2 or 3 weeks after it happened. What happened, I don't exactly know. My understanding is that it was some sort of accident at home. I had not talked to Kristen in quite a while, at least in a couple years. We were friends on Facebook. I did speak to her after she appeared on Unfound. But as far as a timeline of how often I spoke to her, it just wasn't that common. There was nothing negative between us at all, at least to my knowledge. Just one of those things that I can be on very, very good terms with guests, but that doesn't mean that we're talking all the time. Something happened. I don't know what it is. Really none of my business. But very, very sadly, she died in October. I did a count, although I don't have it here in my notes right at this moment, but I'm thinking that we've had now, 9, 10, 11 of Unfound's guests who have passed away. And what do I say every time? It hurts every time. We have another guest who left this earth without all of us being able to figure out what happened to her sister. So that is the update, the death of Brandy's sister, the woman who was the guest on the Brandy Myers episode. I think that was back in 2019. Next update, Chris Sanders. This also strikes me as one that we've not mentioned on an update episode before. Christopher Lynn Sanders was a 40-year-old from Quezon, Texas. He had 2 children and loved to fish. On the morning of August 13th, 2017, in Monahans, Texas, someone saw Chris walk away from his truck, jump a fence, head east on I-20 walking, and disappear in the distance. He was never seen again. The update here is that a local news station, I don't think right in Monahans, but somewhere around there, that area of Texas, is starting a podcast series regarding crimes and disappearances in that area. And Chris's disappearance is going to be included in it. Maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. By the way, I'm recording this on December 23rd, at least this portion of this episode on December 23rd of 2024. So maybe a couple weeks ago, I actually spoke to the young woman who's going to be putting this together. We spoke, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes, because she was out there looking for information on Chris's disappearance, anything that other people have done. She came across Chris's episode from maybe 2020 when I interviewed his sister, and I passed along at least my knowledge, my insights into his disappearance. I did go back and find the notes that I took for that episode and passed those along to her. At that point, she had not yet spoken to Chris's sister. However, she had spoken to Chris's wife, and I think that's interesting because Chris's sister, the guest for the Unfound episode, very suspicious of Chris's wife, and I'm glad that this this future host of that podcast got to speak to the wife. I will tell you, as I told this person, that there's a very, if any, part of me that thinks that Chris's wife had anything to do with this. I realize there might be a question about her location at the time and everything. I just don't find that very compelling, at least at this point, 7 years into his disappearance. Frankly, we've just covered too many disappearances like Chris's that end up the missing person caused his or her own disappearance. There was no foul play. That's still the way I continue to think about Chris's disappearance. I could very well end up being wrong. Always possible. But, and I passed along to her, very well maybe there's foul play, but there's nothing that I see at this point. My guess is that whenever this episode comes out, maybe it'll even be more in-depth than the work I did, simply because it sounds to me like this host is going to talk to a lot more people, has the time to do that. Me, my time is often limited. But I'll be interested to compare and contrast if this reporter puts together an episode, and included in it is an interview with Chris's wife, Chris's sister, any of his friends, anybody like that. And to maybe the description I gave is not quite ringing any bells yet. This is the one he was working in the gas industry, oil industry, petroleum industry in Texas. He was living in a trailer in Monahans with a bunch of other guys who had their own trailers, like in this big parking lot. And the witness stated that he saw Chris leave his trailer. Chris went out to his truck. The alarm, for some reason set the alarm off on his truck when he opened it. Like the horn going off or something. And Chris simply just walked away from the truck. He left the driver's door open. Just walked away from the truck as the alarm is blaring. So, why this guy didn't go out and try to stop Chris? Hey, Chris, what are you doing? I have no idea. And people are wondering, well, did that even really happen? If you don't want to think it happened that way, that's fine by me. But we just have so many disappearances like Chris's that it just rings true that this is what did happen to me, and whatever was going on with Chris, he just walked off. Could he still be alive 7.5 years later? I guess he could be. Not my first choice, but I guess it's possible. But that is the update for Chris Sanders. When is this episode from this news organization in Texas? When is this going to be coming out? I don't know. I'll let you know when I find out. And that ends that update. Next update. Vanessa Orin. Once again, this is one that strikes me as maybe the first time. Maybe not. Maybe no, probably not, given that the guy that is the main suspect in her disappearance ended up committing suicide when they searched his property. So probably she has been mentioned before. But here is the update for Vanessa. Vanessa Sue Orin was a 56-year-old from LaBarge, Wyoming. She was a mother and had lived in several states. Sometime during March of 2016, people who usually saw her around LaBarge stopped encountering her. Her boyfriend told people Vanessa got into a truck with some men and left. She was never seen again. And this boyfriend is the one who, within the last couple of years, like I said, they searched his property in regard to her disappearance. And while they were on the property, he went somewhere and shot himself or something. Now, you might also remember from this disappearance, to spur your memory, that this is the one where some papers that she had, or a journal or something, were found like in a shallow pond on this guy's property, and some other guy ended up getting them. Remember all of that? Yeah, that's Vanessa Orin's disappearance. Well, the update is that within the last couple months, her daughter contacted me. Now, looking back at my records, I had spoken to her before. But she was, of course, not the guest for that episode. It was instead Vanessa's sister. You might remember Tinker Lynch. Remember her? She was the guest, but I'm not so sure that she is involved now. So instead, Vanessa's daughter is kind of taking things over. And so I had to talk with her, and I sent her all of my notes regarding, everything that I collected back then when the episode came out. And so she's trying to move this forward on her own. She's trying to move it forward. We'll see what happens. I'm hopeful. I do believe that foul play is the most likely scenario for Vanessa's disappearance. But, and you should know Vanessa's daughter's name is Chrissy. Really can't get into what we discussed, but she's trying to get to the bottom of this. So I'm glad that she's kind of taken this over. Why I didn't interview her instead way back when for the episode, I don't remember. But that is the update, having a recent talk on the phone with Vanessa Orin's daughter. Next update, Audrey Heron. Audrey Mae Heron was a 31-year-old from Freehold, New Jersey. She was a nurse and the mother of 3. On the night of August 29th, 2002, Audrey left her job in Catskill to make the 20-minute drive home. Audrey never arrived. She and her Jeep were never seen again. There are actually 2 updates, although I don't think that they're related to each other. The first is that within the last month and a half, in the Hudson, New York area, which is kind of in this area where she went missing, some remains were found by a survey crew. Of course, we've heard this kind of situation before, I think with Noah Davis, with Robbie Hurt. I think it was those kinds of crews that found them. And then Crystal Morrison, I think the same thing. There's a lot of road crews, survey crews, people working on roads that have found a lot of missing people, missing persons remains over the many decades. And this sounds like what has happened here. And I even had somebody message me about it, even saying, well, Audrey Heron was found. And then when I went to take a look at it, I think whoever posted it on the Audrey Heron page on Facebook maybe got a little overzealous regarding it. But I think that they determined that the remains were actually of a male, not a female. In addition, I have to believe that Audrey and her Jeep are together. I'm not a person who believes there was foul play here. I know that many of you out there believe there was. Maybe she actually got home that night and something happened. I do not believe that, and so I continue to think that she and her Jeep will be found together somewhere. I can make no real prediction where, since a lot of searches have been done up there and nothing has been found. So she got back into the news because of these remains that were found. But like I said, they don't even have to do any DNA. I think they're pretty secure in the idea that it's a male, not a female. Who this male is, I have to admit that I've not bothered to look at other disappearances in the area to maybe even take a guess. The other update is that recently there was a video posted once again on the Audrey Heron page on Facebook, and there is a retired police officer who is interviewed saying he actually saw her that night or was following her. Now, I have to admit, it's been a while since I listened to the Unfound episode of Audrey's disappearance. I don't remember that being part of the conversation or not. I have to be honest with you. But in looking into that, just to see what that's all about, I discovered that I guess there was a police officer who was parked at some transmission place and saw a Jeep pass by. Whereas, of course, in this recent video here in 2024, he's claiming for sure that it was Audrey. I don't know how he would ever know that. I have no idea. Lots of Jeeps. If it was a purple Ferrari that he saw and that's what she was driving, then we could say yes. But there are a lot of Jeeps out there all over the United States that look like Audrey's. So I don't know how he'd absolutely 100% know it was her Jeep and not somebody else's Jeep. So if you've seen that video and he's saying, well, I was following her or something like that, that story has changed over the years, I guess, from him just being parked on the side of the road to now he was following her, going the opposite direction or whatever it was. I don't know what to make of that. People change stories, and it doesn't necessarily have to be suspicious. But that's the update. Remains found, not Audrey, and then this retired police officer now changing his story at least a little bit. Like I said, I would not look too much into it. Next update, Michaela Bally, this Canadian disappearance. Michaela Margaret Bally was a 16-year-old from Yorkton, Saskatchewan, Canada. She was a shy girl who played the violin. On April 12th, 2016, Michaela was dropped off at school but didn't attend any classes. Over the next several hours, videos around town showed Michaela going to various locations by herself. Those sightings ended at about 1:30 p.m. She was never seen again. The only update here is that out of the blue, her dad contacted me through Messenger, and I spoke to him. I'm recording this on Christmas Eve of 2024. I think it was a week and a half ago, so it would have been Saturday. So that would have been, what is that, about December 14th. He and I had a long conversation, and not, I don't want to go into specifics. I would just say that it's a little bit of continued frustration with the police in that area and what they can release and what they'll tell him and what they won't tell him. Do I think that this disappearance would be different if it were in the United States? I don't know. We might be able to say that maybe there would be more video or something like that. And of course, my perception of transportation in Canada versus the United States is the people in the United States are more likely to drive. So would she be hanging out at a bus stop, at a bus station like she was part of the time? Hard to say. Of course, we have Amber Alerts in the United States. Maybe they have something similar in Canada. If they do, it's not coming to mind. Maybe that would have made a difference back then. But of course, realizing that nobody realized she was missing till much later that day, I don't know if that would have made a difference or not. I continue to ponder is it a coincidence or not that we had her on video all over the place, but no video of her showing her leaving the bus station or having contact with somebody or talking to somebody one-on-one. All we do is have video of her fiddling with her phone and maybe taking the battery out and putting it back in. Was she switching out SIM cards as a way to disguise her communications? I guess that's possible. No proof of that. So it was just continuing frustration on her father's part about not, the investigation seemingly being very stalled, and also that, there's not a lot of teamwork going on here between himself and Michaela's mother. I think that's something, I don't think that I'm speaking out of school there. I think that kind of came out in the episode, and I think it was well known even before Unfound's coverage that they've gone about this their own separate ways. So just had a conversation with him, just like I said, out of the blue, kind of going over everything again. I just like with Vanessa Orin's disappearance, where I had to go back and dig out my notes. I did that for my talk with Michaela's father as well. And, this is one of those situations that if she were like 10 years old or 11, 12 years old, I think we would look at this disappearance very differently and thinking, yes, she definitely got abducted. Whereas if she were in her 20s and this happened, I don't know if we'd be thinking that she got abducted. I think we'd be thinking she just walked off or rode off on a bus or something. But this kind of this tweener age of 15, 16, 17, in there, it kind of brings both possibilities due to her age and what was going on. So frustration. I think we have to remember that there's still a decent chance that Michaela is out there alive. This is a disappearance that's 8.5 years old. Of course, she would be 24, 25 years old now. And, kids run away. And given that nobody is actually seen with her, does give me hope that she wasn't abducted. And this was something where she just left of her own free will. And she's out there living her life, I guess, in Canada. But it doesn't have to be in Canada. I guess she could have gotten into the United States. So that's the update for Michaela B. Next update, Tony Schwar. And this is certainly a first for him, but it's kind of connected to some other work that is going on at Unfound right now. Guy Carlton Schwar, Tony to those who knew him best, was a 29-year-old from Battle Creek, Michigan. He was a big guy who had played football. On December 6th, 1986, Tony, his friend Dennis, and another man allegedly set out from the Bahamas to bring a powerboat to Florida. They never arrived. They were never seen again. A couple different theories going on regarding Tony's disappearance. Of course, when we start thinking about that time frame of the 1980s and powerboats and things, and was there some sort of drug running going on? I think I entertained the idea that did they ever really leave the Bahamas in the first place? Seemed kind of weird that if you'll remember, it was a guy in Florida who had this all happening, and he wanted this boat brought back, his boat that he bought, or he already owned it or something, wanted it brought back from the Bahamas, and for some reason he didn't want to do it himself. So he somehow knew these guys. I don't think that Tony was the contact person, but they got recruited to go to the Bahamas and ride this boat back, and somewhere within all of that, they didn't make it back. Now, the update on this is that I think that we're going to try to bring Tony Schwar's disappearance, of course with this guy Dennis and this other man, into the work that we're doing on Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury. Given that they all happened in the same area within a couple years of each other, I think that we have to be open to the idea that drug running, drug dealing, drug trafficking, drug selling, that whole like Miami Vice type of vibe could be involved in all of this. So I'm having Eric keep that on his radar as well. So I think when we do this series in 2025, that Tony will be revisiting Tony's disappearance at least a little bit, and maybe I'll even have the guest on from that episode as well, from the Tony Schwar episode as well. I think probably that she would like to appear. That person being his sister Lisa, who appeared. I'm guessing she would probably maybe like to be involved, and I'll see what I can do to make that happen. I got to believe she'd like to be involved, so I don't know if she'll think that all of this could be connected somehow with Teresa and Angela or not, but I will certainly let her know that we would like to include Tony's disappearance along with the two other guys in this series come 2025. So that's the update. So I guess what I'm saying is look to be hearing more about Tony Schwar in 2025. Next update, Steve Hammerly and Joe Grishner. Stevie Scott Hammerly was a 26-year-old from Manhattan, Kansas. He was a father and was paralyzed from the waist down. On August 22nd, 1981, Steve and a friend, Joe, were at a party. According to the host, the two left with intentions of returning. They were never seen again. You might remember, to add on to this short description, that seemingly Steve and Joe might have been lured out of there, or they were forced out of there by this guy who was eventually discovered to be a child molester, child abuser, and a lot of that came out later in the 1980s, and you might remember that I even posted some articles concerning that. Well, the update is that Lisa, who was the guest for that episode, Steve's daughter, has been. I give you these updates, and like I said, there's just sometimes I can't say much, but I know you want to know. Hey, is there things going on? So I have to find kind of a happy medium between all of it. And you should know in the message that Lisa sent me, let me see, let me check Messenger. She sent me this on December 6th. It even says right there at the beginning, got some private updates for the case. So I really can't say what she told me, but she's been doing quite a bit of work since she appeared. And it really, I mean, you think about it, it wasn't even that long ago that she was on Unfound. It was just this year. And there's a lot of work going on. And they certainly have discovered some interesting things that I don't know that could have been predicted when I did the interview several months ago. A particular area was searched, and they came across, like I said, I don't really know. I don't want to get in trouble with Lisa. So even though this disappearance is over 40 years old, new facts are being discovered, and we know how rare that is. So I give her all the credit in the world. I give credit to the other people who are helping her. I give credit to, it seems, law enforcement is helping her go, along with this. So maybe we're going to get a resolution in Steve and Joe's disappearances at some point, maybe here in 2025. That would be spectacular. But all I can say is given that this disappearance is over 40 years old, that this much has been done and there's new information is really something. It's really rare. And when I'm allowed to tell you more, I will. That's all I can say for now. Next update, Shannon Collins. And I think this is one of those that updates that seemed very obvious, should have happened a while ago. Even though this disappearance is relatively new in 2021, and then it finally happened. Shannon Lee Collins was a 48-year-old from Pottsville, Arkansas. He was a married military vet with a son and stepdaughter. On March 11th, 2021, Shannon came home from a business trip and had an argument with his wife. The next morning, she says Shannon walked off and didn't return. He was never seen again. The update here is that his wife and his stepdaughter have been charged. And many articles have been written about this, but I am just going to read part of one. They basically all say the same thing. And this happened, I think, back in October. The wife and stepdaughter of a missing U.S. Army veteran who is now presumed dead have been charged with fraudulently claiming $32,000 of his disability benefits after his disappearance. Shannon Collins, 52 years old, vanished in March of 2021 after returning to his wife and son in Pottsville, Arkansas from a trip to Tennessee. You'll remember on that trip, it was a business trip, but he also saw his other woman. I don't want to call it his girlfriend, his mistress, however you want to put it. His wife and immediate family refused to cooperate with authorities investigating the disappearance, and his wife Teresa, with wife Teresa telling them he walked away from the home after an argument. But following a 3-year FBI probe, Teresa, 53, and her daughter from a previous relationship, Brittany Collins, 33, have now both been charged with fraudulently pocketing $32,000 of Shannon's disability funds. The two women were indicted by a grand jury on October 9th on 21 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy, and aiding and abetting over a period from March 12th, 2021 through January of 2022. The mother-daughter were due to appear in court in Little Rock on Thursday, but the arraignment hearing has now been postponed to October 30th, and I don't know what happened on October 30th regarding that. But that is the update. And like I said, in the episode, I think this was something that seemed fairly straightforward that those disability benefits are for Shannon. They aren't for anybody else, even if he is married. And it very well may be that if he had died, or for good reasons, not fraudulent reasons, but good reasons, he had been declared deceased, then I think his wife probably could have collected those benefits. But she can't collect them. She couldn't spend them when there was no declaration that he was dead or whatever else. But that's what she did. And kind of reminds me, now, does this absolutely mean she had something to do with his disappearance? Well, that can be defined a lot of different ways. It certainly may be that she's covering for somebody, or she caused the disappearance herself, she did it herself, or she's covering for somebody. What I will say is that it seems fairly unlikely to me that everything happened the way she explained, and then she goes about keeping his money. That seems unlikely. But in a way, this kind of reminds me of Sherry Papini, of course, the woman who ran away in California and then came back days later saying that two Hispanic women kidnapped her. We now eventually all found out that that was fraud, and that she, during those days, she was gone and spent time at an ex-boyfriend's place. Even though she was married, she had gone down there. She was hiding out at his place, and all of those injuries that were done to her were perpetrated by her, or she kind of forced him to hurt her. And that all came out. Now, what was the biggest reason that Sherry Papini got in trouble? It wasn't the lying to the police and everything else. Of course, those things are bad, and she, I think, is paying restitution for all the work that was done into trying to find her. But what really got her in trouble? She came back to her husband and kids, and she ended up taking government money that is supposed to go to battered women, abused women, that they put aside there in the state of California. That's what really got her in trouble, the taking of the money when she knew that she shouldn't be taking it. Of course, running away and all that is certainly bad, and lying and frankly, in telling the story, it's certainly a racist story, certainly. That's all bad. But what's going to get you in trouble with the law is when you start taking money that isn't yours and you don't deserve it. So I kind of goes to just in reading about what's going on with Shannon's wife and his stepdaughter, just kind of reminds me of that. They don't take that money. Of course, we have to be open to the idea maybe if they did cause this disappearance, it was because of that money. Is $32,000 really enough to do that? Maybe it is for some people. But if they don't take that money, they're still walking around. If they would have had the strength to just leave that money wherever it was going and not touch it, they wouldn't have been charged with anything. And of course, they still might have done something to Shannon, but they could be walking around free women. That is not the situation now. All they had to do was stay away from that money, and they couldn't do it. Final update. Like I said, there aren't many this time around. The final update is with a very recent disappearance that we featured, and that was Jonathan Haden. And kind of this got mentioned in the episode, but I want to make sure that nobody missed it. Jonathan Haden was a 27-year-old from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He was adopted and had two siblings, including a twin sister. In September of 1989, there's not an exact date, Jonathan set fire to his mother's car. The police came and took Jonathan away. He was never seen again. Now, we have to remember that seemingly a friend of his did see him, maybe in 1991, 92, somewhere in there. And then there was this call that Jonathan made to his mother's house after she died in 1997. And she actually spoke to his sister that day, the sister that was the guest. And that was the last that she heard of him, from him. Anybody heard from him. And then, of course, much recently, of course, 25 years later or something, this sister got interested in trying to find Jonathan and see if he was still alive or not. The update, and like I said, this was in the episode, but just want to make sure everybody caught it, that Jonathan did die in 1997. There are records for it. And with my help, with certainly Assistant Emily, helped his sister out, kind of wading through the red tape, as it were, of Canada, giving her a step-by-step process of what to do. Joanne was able to find out that it seems that Jonathan might have committed suicide. Maybe it was an overdose. He did have mental health issues. He had a drug problem. So I guess we have to be open to a couple different possibilities there, but no foul play. And I guess we then have to believe that he died not long after calling his, right after his mother died. He's calling to see if he got any money. When he found out he wasn't, it's seemingly he hung up on her, on Joanne. So that disappearance is resolved. Totally resolved. And myself and Emily are very happy to help Joanne get to that conclusion. I know it's not the ending that she wanted, but there's at least no more mystery as to what happened to him. And I have to admit, I forget, did he die in the area where he went missing from or somewhere else? I forget. I don't have it in my notes here. But that disappearance is totally resolved. And that concludes all the updates for the podcast. I will now do updates for any Unfound Nows. Of course, this is a series that airs almost monthly on YouTube. Unfortunately, we only have one update for all of the Unfound Nows that have been done since the summer of 2020. You should know some of those are solved, but many of them aren't. And still, we only have one, and that would be for Sebastian Rogers. He was a young man, a 16-year-old, who was slightly autistic. I don't know where exactly he was on the spectrum. I don't know if he was on the extreme end. I think he was more on the mild end, but he went missing from Hendersonville, Tennessee in February of this year, 2024. Allegedly, he disappeared in the middle of the night. His mother might have heard something and didn't think much of it until he wasn't around that next morning. And virtually since the beginning, there have been a lot of allegations thrown back and forth. Did the mother and her new guy have something to do with Sebastian's disappearance? Or is it possible that Sebastian's real father had something to do with it? A lot of pointing of fingers over the course of 2024. The update is that within the last month or so, they released a new video, and it is of Sebastian and his mother at some restaurant in the area the day before, or maybe the evening before, he went missing. It's just the two of them, and it's at a crowded restaurant. From the clip that I saw, he's eating, and his mother is kind of looking around. And I watched a video in which there was a retired FBI agent making a big deal of this. Why? The woman said it's not, of course, I want to be clear, it's not friend of the program, Julia Cowley. It's not her that I'm talking about, retired FBI agent. It's somebody else. But on this video, this agent made a big deal of, wow, it's so weird how she's looking around like that. And it's really weird how Sebastian is eating and, what's going on here. I didn't see that. First of all, you have to remember, at least the video I saw, it wasn't running at real-time speed. So we watched the video. A second is not a second. The video seems to be slowed down maybe not 50%, but maybe 70, maybe it's like running at 75%, 80% or something. So that does give it a weird quality. I'll grant you that. But who knows? Is it true that Sebastian's mother was like looking around? Yeah, it's true. I don't know what that means. I go to play trivia on Wednesday evenings. I'm guessing once in a while I look around at who's there and everything as well. Is that suspicious? No. I don't know. I think, like I said, very well could be this retired agent is just seeing what she wants to see. And she's on TV and who knows what people think. They want to add some sort of sensationalism to it. They feel like they have to say something. I don't know. But it's out there. It's on YouTube. It's not on our YouTube channel, the Unfound Podcast Channel on YouTube. It's not at the website. But you can find it out there. And really, that's the only thing that's really gone on in the last 4 months regarding Sebastian Rogers. As far as what we call an update, there's a lot of going back and forth, but I wouldn't call that those updates. It's just talk. So that is the update. Maybe you want to go out there and find that video and view it for yourself. And that's it. That is the only update for all of the Unfound Nows since 2020. As I stated in the run-up to this episode coming out, I had a feeling that there would not be a ton of updates, and I was correct. And I don't think that's my fault or any of your faults or anything else. It's just we've had a couple updates here in a row here in 2024 where there hasn't been a ton to talk about. It was very common maybe the last few years, maybe going back to 2021, 2022, maybe even to 2023, where you maybe have 30 updates just with the podcast alone without the Unfound Nows. Whereas this one, I think we have, 15 or 16 combining both. So things are a little slow. Maybe they'll pick up in 2025. If you could now pause whatever you are doing as I now read off all of the missing people featured on Unfound and Unfound Now. Suzanne Lyle, Jason Jolkowski, Jesse Foster, Rose Marie Gayhart, Ben Charles Padilla, Kelly Rothwell, Joshua Guimond, Donnie Smatlack, Andrea Bowman, Robin Abrams, Regina Marie Boss, Christopher Hyde, Jeff Nichols, Rebecca Gary, James Walker, Teresa Butler, Charlotte Paulus, Lola Catherine Fry, Eric Franks, Jeff Joseph, Donna Mikolenko, David Medot, Kent Monroe, and Omar Shearer, Claudia Wells, Peggy and Patty McDaniel, Shannon Turner, Brandy Wells, Cleshindra Hall, Ronnie Russell, Esther Westenbarger, Shane Fell, Ashley Eifert, Brandon Williams, Craig Freer, Pamela Golden, Chip Campbell, Amanda DeGuio, the passengers and crew of Flight 370, April Pitzer, Jennifer Wilkerson, Kent Jacobs, Aaron Gilbert, Tammy Leppert, Crystal Morrison, Chris Turner, Linda Carroll, Nikki McCown, Helen Diamond, Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman, Lucinda Hewells, Ashley Kohler, Debbie Lowe, Patrick Beavers, Clinton Nelson, Troy Galloway, Patty Action, Danielle Bell, Evelyn Hartley, Dow Phillips, Tyler Stice, Bill Underhill, Patricia Taylor, Aaron Barnard, Jeremy Burt, Brian Sullivan, Nikki Wells, Marina Bolter, Mandy Stokes, Greg Brooks, Rebecca Henderson, Dominic Holly Grisham, Tiffany Daniels, Nicholas Masucci, Donald Irwin, Billy DiSilvestro, Renee Yergain, Mikkel Biggs, Al Copper, J.R. Mullahan, Jamie Bowen, Travis Robertson, Rosemary Rapp, Kristen Modafferi, Zoe Campos, Sean Ginyard, Thomas Brown, Amanda Fravel, Julie Early, Ellen Sloan, Renee Lamanna, Nico Leisi, Leah Peebles, Melissa Hasley, Kimberly Raymer, Stephen Kocher, Bonnie Joseph, Immaculate Basil, Bobby Campbell, Kimberly Norwood, Alyssa Turney, Bobby Tennyson, Dale Kerstetter, Lacey Buenfil, Peggy Maguire, Jansen Brewer and Daniel Braden, Robert Wayne Cox, Lucas Degerness, Stephen Adams, Ashley Summers, Bonnie Dagus and Jeremy Dagus, Judith Emke, Jessica Hamby, Tim Beauchart, Devin Bond, Juanita Nelson, Desiree Ferris, Angie Yarnell, Deborah Asbury, Sean Koski, Mary Lands, Devin Brown Busetta, Shanna Boydo, Travis Murrow, Keith Fetter, Layla Faulkner, Megan Lancaster, Kelly Sims, Jack Hemby, Barbara Frame, Dory Ann Myers, Austin Pivo, Christine Hamilton, Monica Appleton, Jonathan Estes, Molly Miller, and Colt Haynes, Donnie Martin III, Kamisha Hollis, Lisa Wallace, Tammy McKittrick, Julie Say, Stephanie Clemens, Andy Chapman, Trevor Nichols, Tiffany Joseph, Tyler North, David Kesey, Lucera Sarabia, Brandy Myers, J.L. Hamblin, Bradley Allen, Timothy Guy, Janelle Matthews, Ronald McNutt, Cameron Remmer, Tammy Arthur, and Chad Peters, Jesse Ross, Lisa Shuttleworth, Jackson Miller, Patrick Reed, Jeremy Goodwin, Mary Jane Van Gilder, Phyllis Corbin, Eric Alvarado, Cassandra Ramirez, April Andrews, David Hardy Jr., Dennis Lushbaugh, Christy Nichols, Chris Sanders, Danielle Sleeper, Julie Weflin, Shelva Rafty, Rodney Kaiser, Chris Mittendorf and Christina Branham, Gregory Howes, Brian Cook, Charles Thompson, Jessica Garino, Jacob Weeks, Jackie Bucky Letney, Joe Bain, Vanessa Orin, Jennifer Casper Ross, Robbie Hurt, Unique Harris, Doug Jones, Deborah Bowman, Bradley Brooks, Angela Green, Jody Husentrut, Brennan Smokey, Rouse Chapman, Marion Hurley, Gayla Shaper, Caleb Powell, Chelsea Cobo, Bonnie Santiago, TJ Murray, Noah Davis, Patty Dudek, Ben Archer, Jake Lachelet, Sky Burnley, Kayleen Oling, Stephanie Hartwell, Nylene Marshall, Kaya Taylor, Pearl Pinson, Brenda Condon, Alwyn Albright, Sky Tosick, Sandy Knipe, Brian Schaefer, Teresa Woolard, Toby Anderson, David Schrader, Chance Engelbert, Julianne Gillet, Rachel Sierks, Sean Antill, Randy Duran, Rashawn Francis, Amanda Ward Romine, Crystal Bailey, Brenda Sika, Laverta Sorrell, Nicholas Shin, Kevin Newen, Ashley Simpson, Leanne Hosberg, Alicia Markovich, Audrey Heron, Lonine Rogers, Beatrice Viela, Ali Lowitzer, Jamie Peterson, Belinda Blaniar, Jordan Carvalho, Christian Balky Thompson, Paul Sanders, Jennifer Perry, Andrea Knabel, Sebastian Kelly, Marianne Verdecchia, Marcella Krolsey, and Mary Regan, Sue Swedell, Mark Heimbaugh, Dub and Chance Wackerhagen, Kimberly Wilson Talley, Harry Milligan, Paul Egan, Steve Davis, Douglas Crawford, Rhonda Smith, Ryan Stuka, Daniel Villarreal, Mary Watkins, Bradley Strassner, Justin Gaines, Jacqueline Cooper, Holly White, Michaela Bally, Chase Lackey, Belinda Brewster, the Pickering Six, Jay Boyle, Michael Cummins, Danny Higgins, Chad Smith, Robbie Rumbolt, and Jamie Lafaber. Brenda Davidson, Milda McQuillan, Kyle Fleischman, Paris Hobson, Bernard Rusness and Peggy McKay, Jessica Stacks, Natasha and Susan Carter, Angela Freeman, Mark Allen, Mary Cox, Jamie Valdez, Jace Martin, Brandon Rashar, Keith Call and Sandra Haley, Evelyn Piper, Leslie Allen and children, Matthew Braswell, Brandon Roberts, Emily Richards, Bo Mann, Judith Devers Hyder, Barbara McCrae, Judy Brown and Richard Riesenberg, Jason Landry, Athel Turner, Treveline Evans, Alan Glasgow, Barbara Cotton, Tony Schwark, Sean Dickerson, Patricia Otto, David Wagoner, Mara Murray, Brian Vargo, Bianca Carrasco, Paige Renkowski, Betty Tepfer, Joel Akridge, Brenda Lambert, Aaliyah Boomer, Donnie Atkins, Brandon Barron, Jesse Farber, Christopher Dalfit, John Spira, Patsy Clark, Arlen Bynum, Irene Gakwa, Kenny Weaver, Ashley Higgins, Camille Dardanes, Pauline Diaz, Jamie Lee, Lisa Green, Larry Goodman,
Irma McCurcheon, Glenda Griffin, Nancy Garcia, Kim Moreau, Carl Pope, Elena Carisi, Sylvia Galvin, April Wiss, Ashley Linden, Jaden Carpenter, Ricky Bryant, David Fugati, Stevie Hammerly, and Joe Grashner, Aiden Clune, Brianna Maitland, James Leidka, Ray Fausto-Leppi, Elaine Johnson, Carl Schooner Jr., Valerie Ingorvaya, Clinton Thomas Sr., Zach Carey, Shannon Collins, David Kallenberger, Blanca Elisa Robertson, Melinda Lopez, Marlo Christopher Gully,
Matthew Keith, Christopher McNeil, Rob McLaughlin, Deanna Merrifield, Erica Hall, Clint Walker, Lene Westbrook, Joe Bushling, Jonathan Haddon, Tatiana Lupich, Jared McCulloch, Keith Mann,
Linda Stoltfus, Erica Lloyd, Mary Lane Carter, Stephanie Hollingsworth, Corey Dale Moore, Alan White, Jason Landry, Aaliyah Scheibel, Kirsten Brueggemann, Mark Pinella, Cynthia Baal Traore, Louis Davila, Candy Gonzalez, Justin Syweck, Michael Vaughn, Wendy Gessing, Shannon Miller, Glenda Parton, and Dwayne Selby, Heidi Plank, Stephen Salazar, Lindsay Shobalok, Jordan Simeon, Marie Peter Toltz, Dylan Rounds, Dana Smithers, Gregory Peterson, Caitlin Rose Case, Lorenzo Holmes Jr., Elizabeth Capaldi, Christopher Miller, John Tipton, Maya Blanton, Bao Fan, Shauna Helford, Andrew France, Kay Alana Turner, Andrew Griffin, Fang Jin and John Fitzpatrick, Reno Long, Chelsea Grimm, Caitlin Alice Massey White, Thomas Irwin, Tyler Goodrich, Caleb Harris, Sebastian Rogers, Nadia Cole, Aaron Ong, and daughter Soraya, Taylor Casey,
William Orlano, Cynthia McCoy. Please, if you are someone with the time and passion for these disappearances, please seek out one of these families. They could use all the help they can get. And that's the program. And that ends the year 2024 for Unfound. As I've stated many times recently, the podcast is going on a bit of a hiatus. However, I will still be uploading episodes every Friday, starting probably with the disappearance of Jesse Foster. I'm Ed Denzel, and you've been listening to